Hello, welcome back to another evening of shared stories and theories. Tonight we're diving into the world of Hawkins, Indiana one last time. I'll be covering all the finale predictions and ending theories I can fit in for tonight, but honestly, there's so much to unpack that we could probably talk for hours. So, we'll start with where the story actually is right now, after Volume 2 dropped on Christmas. Then we'll move on to the big reveals about the Upside Down, Eleven's potential sacrifice, death predictions, and what the actual final battle might look like, as well as some wild theories that honestly might not be that wild. Plenty to get talking about, but if you like what I do here and want a way to support the channel, consider subscribing down below. But for now, grab your flashlight and Eggo waffles, get cozy wherever you are, and let's begin. So way before we can predict how this all ends, we need to talk about where we actually are in the story. And honestly, these first 7 episodes have been absolutely wild. Stranger Things. Season 5 has been released in 3 volumes, which is a pretty unusual strategy for Netflix. Volume 1 dropped on November 26th with 4 episodes, Volume 2 arrived on Christmas Day with 3 more, and the finale is coming December 31st. That's New Year's Eve, which feels significant somehow, like maybe the Duffers are trying to tell us something about fresh starts or endings or both. Volume 1 set the stage in a massive way. The fall of 1987 has arrived in Hawkins, and the town is basically scarred from the 4-way gate split at the end of Season 4. The military has placed the entire town under quarantine, and they're hunting for Eleven pretty aggressively. She's forced back into hiding with Hopper, which honestly feels like we've gone full circle back to Season 1 in some ways. But the biggest moment in Volume 1, at least for me, was Will Byers finally coming into his own. In Episode 4, when the group is attacked by a swarm of Demogorgons, Will taps into these latent powers he's had all along and just absolutely destroys them. The visual of it was really similar to how Vecna kills people, which is both cool and terrifying when you think about it. Will's been connected to the Upside Down since he was kidnapped back in 1983, and we finally got to see what that connection actually means for him. What's really interesting is that Will also had his coming out moment in Volume 2. The show had been hinting at his sexuality for seasons, and he finally told the group explicitly. Their reaction was beautiful, honestly. Just complete acceptance and support, which is exactly what Will needed to hear. It means he can stop being afraid of what Vecna knows about him and actually use his connection to the hive mind to help in the final battle. Then there's Carly's return, which I honestly wasn't expecting. Carly, also known as 8, was introduced way back in Season 2 in that divisive episode where Eleven goes to find her. A lot of people hated that episode at the time, but it turns out it was set up for this final season. Eleven and Hopper find Carly imprisoned in a secret military base inside the Upside Down. She's been there for months, hooked up to IVs, having her blood harvested. Apparently, the military has been transfusing her blood into pregnant women, trying to create more powered individuals. It's basically the same program that created Eleven and Vecna in the first place, just continuing the cycle. Vecna himself has been busy. He successfully kidnapped 12 children to use as vessels for his plan. These kids are trapped in his mindscape, which is called Kamazots, and they're being used to amplify his power so he can merge the abyss with our world. Among the kidnapped is Derek, who went from being this obnoxious bully character to actually quite likeable, and Holly Wheeler, who has a much bigger role this season than anyone expected. Max Mayfield also wakes up for real this time, not another fake out, and she's trapped in Kamazots with Holly. The two of them spend a lot of Volume 2 trying to escape, exploring this nightmarish dreamscape that Vecna controls. Volume 2 is where we got some massive reveals. Dustin discovers Dr. Brenner's hidden journals and figures out that the Upside Down isn't actually another dimension at all. It's a wormhole, a bridge between our world and the abyss. This completely changes how we understand the entire mythology of the show, and we'll talk about that in detail next. By the end of Episode 7, which is titled The Bridge, everyone has finally assembled in one place called the Right Side Up. They've got a plan to stop Vecna, rescue the kids, and collapse the wormhole permanently. Eleven and Carly are going to launch a psychic assault on Vecna. Steve has identified a path to the abyss. Dustin wants to bomb the exotic matter sphere to destroy the bridge. It's classic Stranger Things, really. A complicated plan with multiple moving parts that will probably go sideways in at least 3 different ways. But the most heartbreaking moment came in a conversation between Carly and Eleven. Carly basically told her that the only way to stop the government from continuing to create powered weapons is for both of them to die, to sacrifice themselves by staying in the upside down when it collapses. At the end of episode 7, there's this look between them, and it seems like Eleven might have agreed, so even if they win, we might lose her. That's where we are heading into the finale. The stage is set, the teams are assembled, and the stakes have never been higher. Now let's talk about one of the most mind-bending reveals in the entire series, because it turns out everything we thought we knew about the Upside Down was wrong. In Volume 2, Dustin Henderson makes his way into the Upside Down's version of Hawkins' lab. He's exploring the facility, probably terrified out of his mind, when he discovers a hidden room. Inside, he finds Dr. Brenner's secret journals. These aren't just any notes, they're detailed scientific documentation about the experiments Brenner was conducting, the nature of the Upside Down, and what actually happened the night 11 opened the first gate back in 1983. What Dustin discovers completely recontextualizes the entire mythology of Stranger Things. The Upside Down, that dark mirror version of Hawkins we've been visiting since Season 1, isn't actually another dimension. It's not a parallel world that exists alongside ours. It's a wormhole, a bridge between 2 points in space and time, connecting our world to something else entirely. Breaking down the science for the group, Dustin explains that there are actually 3 distinct things at play here. There's our world, Earth. There's the Upside Down, which is the bridge. And then there's the Abyss, which is the actual other dimension that the bridge connects to. The Abyss is this desolate, red, Mars-like landscape where the real horrors live. It's the home of the Demogorgons, the source of the Mind Flayer particles, and the place where Henry Creel has been trapped since Eleven banished him as a child. Fun fact, in the Duffer Brothers' early planning documents, they didn't call it the Abyss. They called it Dimension X, which is a Ninja Turtles reference. The name the Abyss comes from Dungeons and Dragons lore, specifically the plane of chaos and evil. Dustin, being the massive nerd that he is, names it after the D&D realm when he's explaining everything to the group. It fits pretty perfectly, honestly. So here's how it all actually works. Back in the 1950s, young Henry Creel was already a powerful psychic. Dr. Brenner eventually got his hands on Henry and was experimenting on him at Hawkins' lab. When Henry revealed his true nature and killed a bunch of people, Eleven was the only one strong enough to stop him. She used her powers to banish him, essentially ripping him out of our dimension entirely. Henry was sent to the Abyss, that horrible red wasteland, where he's been ever since. But Brenner didn't just let Henry disappear. He wanted to find him, to study him, to maybe even bring him back under control. So Brenner forced young Eleven into the sensory deprivation tank, what they called the bath, and made her search for Henry across dimensions. When Eleven finally made psychic contact with Henry in the Abyss, something happened. The connection between them, the sheer power of it, created a stable wormhole. That wormhole is what we've been calling the Upside Down this entire time. The Upside Down is basically a pocket dimension, a tunnel that Henry and his monsters have been using to cross back into Hawkins. It's why the Upside Down looks like Hawkins frozen on November 6th, 1983. That's the night 11 made contact. That's the night the bridge was formed. The Upside Down is in its own world with its own history. It's a snapshot, a doorway, a passage between our reality and Henry's prison. What's wild is how much this changes our understanding of literally everything that's happened. Every time we thought creatures were coming from the Upside Down, they were actually coming from the Abyss, just using the Upside Down as a highway. Every time a gate opened, it wasn't opening to the Upside Down itself. It was opening the bridge wider, making it easier for things to cross over from the Abyss. The Mind Flayer, the Demogorgons, all of it originates from that red hellscape where Henry has been building his army. Dustin also figures out what that massive sphere of energy is that Nancy shot at in an earlier episode. They thought it might be some kind of shield generator, like the Death Star in Return of the Jedi. But it's not. It's a mass of exotic matter, the same stuff that's used to stabilize wormholes in theoretical physics. The sphere is basically the anchor point, the thing keeping the bridge open and stable, which means if they can destroy it, they can collapse the wormhole entirely. The Duffers have confirmed in interviews that they wrote a 20-page mythology document back when they pitched the show to Netflix. It detailed exactly what the Upside Down was, where it came from, and how it all connected. They've been holding on to this information for years, waiting for the right moment to reveal it. I honestly hadn't realised the show's cosmology was this carefully planned from the beginning, but apparently it was all there in that document. This revelation is massive because it means defeating Vecna isn't enough. They need to collapse the bridge itself, cut off the abyss from Earth permanently, or nothing they do will matter in the long run. And speaking of things that need to happen for the plan to work, we need to talk about what might be the most heartbreaking conversation in Volume 2, because Carly laid out a scenario that nobody wanted to hear. After Eleven and Hopper rescue Carly from the military's upside-down base, Carly fills Eleven in on what's been happening to her. Once her friends were killed, she was taken to this facility and hooked up to machines. Doctors continuously drew her blood, storing it, processing it, using it for something. Carly fought back at one point and nearly escaped. That's when she discovered the truth. Her blood was being transfused into pregnant women. The military was trying to create more people with powers, using Carly as the source material. It's the same program that created Henry Creel in the first place. The same experiments that led to Eleven's birth. The same cycle of exploitation and weaponization that's been going on since at least the 1950s. Dr. Brenner ran it for decades. When he died, someone else took over. Now it's Dr. K, played by Linda Hamilton, who's running the show. And if Dr. K dies or gets arrested, someone else will replace her. The program never ends. It just changes hands. Carly explains all of this to Eleven in a scene that's honestly devastating to watch. She's not angry, exactly. She's resigned. She's accepted the reality of what they are, what they represent to people in power. They're not people to the government. They're weapons. They're resources. They're the key to creating armies of superpowered soldiers. Then Carly gets to the point. She tells Eleven that the only way to stop the cycle is for both of them to die, not just defeat Vecna, not just destroy the lab, actually die. Remove themselves from the equation permanently so their blood can't be harvested anymore, so the experiments can't continue. Carly's exact words are something like, "Don't you see, Jane? It's a cycle, a terrible, vicious cycle, but we can stop it tonight. After we kill Henry, after the children are rescued, we don't leave with the others. We stay on the bridge. When the Upside Down vanishes, so will we. It is the only way, Jane, the only way." The conversation gets interrupted by Murray before Eleven can fully respond. So we don't actually know for sure whether Eleven agreed to this plan or not. But at the end of episode 7, there's this moment. The group is loading into trucks, heading out for the final mission. Mike asks Eleven if she's ready. She says yes, and then she looks at Carly and gives her this tiny nod. Just a look between them, but it seems to confirm something. An agreement, an understanding. Ross Duffer said in an interview that there's a sense of dread and uncertainty that pervades the end of that episode. Even if they succeed in defeating Vecna, there's a massive question mark about what happens to Eleven, whether she'll actually go through with sacrificing herself. What's really interesting is that earlier in Volume 2, Mike has this conversation with Eleven about the future. He talks about moving somewhere together, somewhere peaceful with at least one waterfall. It's this beautiful, hopeful vision of a normal life they could have together. Just the two of them, away from all the monsters and the government and the constant danger. But that conversation now feels like foreshadowing. Like maybe Mike is dreaming of a future that can't happen. To be honest, I don't know if the Duffers will actually go through with killing Eleven. It feels too obvious in some ways. The show has been building toward this kind of sacrifice since season 1, when Eleven seemingly died killing the Demogorgon. We've seen her willing to give everything for her friends over and over again. Her powers have always taken a physical toll. The nosebleeds, the exhaustion, Brenner's ominous statement in Season 2 that her powers would eventually kill her. It's all been pointing toward this, but at the same time, it's so obvious that it might be a misdirection. Stranger Things loves to set up expectations and then subvert them. Maybe 11 agrees to the plan, but someone else sacrifices themselves instead. Maybe they find another way to break the cycle. Maybe Carly is wrong, and there's a solution she hasn't considered. The other possibility is that 11 does sacrifice herself, but not permanently. She could get trapped in the upside down when it collapses, existing in some kind of limbo state. Or she could lose her powers, but survive. There are ways to have her make the sacrifice, without it being a literal death. What makes this setup so effective and so painful is that Carly's logic is sound. As long as 11 and Carly exist, as long as their blood can be harvested and studied and weaponized, the cycle will continue. Defeating Vecna solves the supernatural threat, but the human threat, the military and the government experiments, that doesn't end unless they're gone. So the question heading into the finale isn't just, will they defeat Vecna? It's at what cost? And can 11 really walk away from this, or will saving the world require losing herself? But 11 isn't the only character whose arc is coming to a head in this finale. Let's talk about Will Byers, because after 4 seasons of being the victim, of being connected to this nightmare against his will, his story is finally coming full circle. Will's journey has been at the heart of Stranger Things since the very first episode. He was the boy who vanished, the one who got dragged into the Upside Down and came back changed. Ever since his rescue in Season 1, he's had this connection to the Upside Down that nobody fully understood. He could sense the Mind Flayer in Season 2. He could feel when it was close, when it was angry, when it was planning something. The back of his neck would tingle, and he'd just know something was wrong. In Season 2, Will was basically being used as a spy by the Mind Flayer. He was possessed, sure, but even after the possession ended, the connection remained. He'd have these episodes where he'd sort of zone out, and during those times, he was tapping into the hive mind without realizing it. Vecna was using him, manipulating him, having him dig out an entire tunnel system under Hawkins while he slept. That's one of the big reveals from Volume 2, actually. Vecna calls Will his builder, because all those tunnels from Season 2, the ones that damaged the pumpkin patches and created passageways for the demodogs, Will made those. Not consciously, but he made them. He was using the vines, the organic matter of the Upside Down, to construct an infrastructure for Vecna's monsters. It gave the demodogs faster routes to their targets. It spread corruption through Hawkins, and Will had no idea he was doing it. That reveal is honestly pretty tragic when you think about it. Will has spent years feeling guilty about being connected to the Upside Down, and now he finds out he was actively helping the bad guys, even if it was against his will. But in Season 5, Will finally takes control of that connection. In Episode 4, when the group is surrounded by a swarm of Demogorgons, Will taps into his powers deliberately. He reaches into the hive mind and just destroys them. The visual is striking and a bit terrifying because it looks really similar to how Vecna kills people. Same kind of psychic energy, same force, just directed at monsters instead of humans. What's really interesting is how this power reveal connects to Will's other big moment this season, his coming out. The show has been hinting at Will's sexuality since basically the beginning. Mike's obliviousness in Season 3 and 4. Will's clear feelings that he couldn't express. The way he looked at Mike, it was all there, and Volume 2 finally makes it explicit. Will tells the group the truth before the final mission. He's scared, because Vecna has been using his sexuality against him, showing him visions, threatening to expose him in cruel ways. But Will decides to be brave. He tells everyone, and their reaction is exactly what he needed. Complete support. No judgment, just love and acceptance from his friends. I love that the show finally addressed this directly, instead of just implying it. And what makes it even more powerful is that by coming out, by refusing to be ashamed of who he is, Will removes Vecna's power over him. He's no longer afraid of what Vecna knows. which means he can tap into the hive mind to help 11 without that fear holding him back. Fun fact, Noah Schnapp said in an interview that he read the scripts up through episode 6, and he kept thinking, okay, so Will's coming out scene isn't here yet, it must be in episode 7 or the finale. He wanted to know when it would happen so he could prepare for it emotionally. So heading into the finale, Will is probably one of the most important pieces on the board. He can communicate with 11 while she's in Camazotz. He can potentially sense what Vecna is planning. He might even be able to disrupt Vecna's control over the 12 children. His connection to the Upside Down, the thing that's been a curse for so long, might be the key to winning. Will's arc from victim to hero feels like it's building to something major. Whether that means he sacrifices himself, or whether he survives and finally gets to just be a normal kid, we'll find out soon enough. Now, speaking of characters making unexpected returns, we need to talk about someone I honestly wasn't sure we'd ever see again. Because Carly's comeback was one of the most shocking moments in Volume 1. Carly, also known as 8 or 008, was introduced way back in Season 2 in an episode called The Lost Sister. It's episode 7 of that season, and it's probably the most divisive episode in the entire series. The episode takes 11 away from Hawkins completely and follows her to Chicago, where she finds Carly and her gang of misfits. They're running around using Carly's illusion powers to get revenge on people who wronged them. At the time, fans absolutely hated that episode. I remember the reactions online. People felt like it broke the momentum of the season, right when things were getting intense back in Hawkins. It felt like filler, like a backdoor pilot for a spin-off nobody asked for. The pacing was off. The tone didn't quite match. It was just this weird detour that most people wanted to forget about. But it turns out the Duffers were playing the long game. That episode wasn't filler at all. It was set up for Season 5. In Volume 1, 11 and Hopper infiltrate what they think is Vecna's base in the Upside Down. They're expecting a confrontation with Henry, ready for a fight. Instead, they find a military facility, Dr. K's operation. And inside, hooked up to machines and IVs, is Carly. She's been a prisoner there for months, maybe longer. The military found her after her friends were killed. She tried to resist, tried to escape, but they have technology that suppresses powers. She was basically helpless. What happened to her during that imprisonment is pretty horrific. They were harvesting her blood constantly, draining it, storing it, using it for experiments. Carly didn't know why at first, but during one escape attempt, she discovered the truth. They were transfusing her blood into pregnant women, trying to create more powered individuals, trying to manufacture an army of psychics. Carly's powers are different from 11's. She can create illusions, make people see things that aren't there, manipulate perception. It's basically telepathy focused on vision and sensory manipulation rather than physical force. She can make herself invisible, make threats appear out of nowhere, drive people mad with false visions. In the right hands, or the wrong hands I suppose, it's an incredibly dangerous ability for psychological warfare. The Duffers brought Carly back because they needed to show the dual threat that's been present throughout the entire series. There's the supernatural threat, which is Vecna and the creatures from the abyss. But there's also the human threat, the government, the military, the people who see powered individuals as weapons to be controlled rather than people to be protected. Ross Duffer said in an interview that this dual threat has been there since Season 1. Brenner was the face of it initially. Then he died and got replaced. The program continued. The exploitation continued. And it will keep continuing unless something fundamental changes. That's why Carly represents a more pessimistic worldview compared to Mike's optimism about butterflies and rainbows and happy endings. She's seen firsthand that defeating the monster isn't enough. The system that creates monsters will just make more. Fun fact, the production team managed to keep Carly's return completely secret, despite Linnea Berthelsen being on set for months. That's pretty impressive, given how much Stranger Things gets photographed by paparazzi and fans. In the finale, Carly and 11 are planning to launch a coordinated psychic assault on Vecna. Carly will use her illusion powers to confuse and disorient him, while 11 hits him with raw force. It's the kind of teamwork that could actually work, assuming they both survive long enough to try it. While 11 and Carly are preparing for their assault, there's another mission that's just as critical, because Max and Holly are trapped in something truly nightmarish, and getting them out won't be easy. Max Mayfield has been in a coma since the end of season 4. Vecna killed her technically. Her heart stopped, her bones were broken, and she was clinically dead for over a minute before 11 brought her back. But bringing her back didn't mean she was okay. She's been comatose, trapped somewhere between life and death for months. In Volume 1, we got a fake out where it seemed like she was waking up, but it turned out to be Vecna manipulating things. Finally, in Volume 2, Max actually wakes up, for real this time, except she's not in a hospital bed in Hawkins, she's in Camazotz, which is what they're calling Vecna's mindscape. It's this psychological prison where Vecna has trapped the minds of his victims and his vessels. The place looks like a twisted version of the Creel house, Henry's childhood home, but wrong, distorted. Everything is slightly off in that way that dreams can be unsettling, even when nothing overtly scary is happening. Holly Wheeler is there too, which honestly surprised a lot of people. Holly is Mike and Nancy's little sister, and in previous seasons she's been pretty much a background character. Just a little kid who occasionally notices weird things but doesn't really factor into the plot. But this season, she has a much larger role. She gets kidnapped by Vecna and becomes one of his 12 vessels. Fun fact, Holly is played by Nell Fisher in season 5, and apparently Matt Duffer spotted her in just the trailer for Evil Dead Rise and thought she looked perfect for the role. When she came into audition, she blew them away, and Matt got to brag that he'd identified her early, though Ross Duffer jokes that they would have found her anyway through the normal casting process. In Camazotz, Max and Holly attempt multiple escapes. They explore this nightmare realm looking for a way out, and they discover something interesting. There's a cave within the mindscape, a dark, ominous cave that seems to terrify Vecna in some way. Holly theorizes that the cave represents a traumatic memory that Henry's trying to avoid, something from his past that he's buried deep and doesn't want to confront. Max thinks they should wait in the cave for rescue, that it's the safest place. But Holly's more proactive. She wants to find their own way out. What makes their situation even more disturbing is the other children. The 12 kids that Vecna kidnapped are all there in Camazotz, but they're not themselves anymore. They're acting like they're in some kind of cult. Vacant eyes, synchronized movements, completely under Vecna's control. At one point, these children actually attack Holly. Not even Derek, who becomes sort of an ally earlier, stands up for her. It's genuinely creepy watching these kids, who should be scared and trying to escape, instead acting as extensions of Vecna's will. I found this whole sequence pretty disturbing, honestly. The idea of children being mentally enslaved and weaponized is rough, and the fact that their physical bodies are also at risk makes it worse. Their minds are trapped in Camazotz, but their bodies are somewhere in the actual Upside Down, probably at the Creel house, or near it, which means the rescue team needs to extract their bodies before Dustin's plan to bomb the exotic matter goes into effect. At the end of episode 7, we see Vecna gathering all 12 children in the Creel house. He's preparing for some kind of ceremony or ritual. The children hold hands around a table while Henry lights candles. Then their eyes roll back in their heads, going completely white. It's the beginning of whatever spell or process Vecna needs to merge the worlds. And Holly's mind is still trapped there with them. Rescuing Holly and the other kids before the wormhole collapses is absolutely critical. Otherwise, they'll be lost forever. You can't talk about the finale without discussing Dr. K, because in some ways, she might be more dangerous than Vecna himself. Dr. K is played by Linda Hamilton, which is absolutely perfect casting when you think about it. The woman who played Sarah Connor, who fought against machines trying to wipe out humanity, is now playing someone who wants to weaponize children with superpowers. There's something deeply ironic about that. Linda Hamilton has said in interviews that she's a massive fan of Millie Bobby Brown, which makes their antagonistic relationship on screen even more interesting. Dr. K is the current head of the military operation in Hawkins. After the gates split the town open at the end of Season 4, the government placed the entire area under military quarantine. Officially, it's for safety reasons. Unofficially, it's to control access and continue their experiments away from public scrutiny. Dr. K is running the show now, and her primary objective is to capture 11. Unlike Dr. Brenner, who had this sort of twisted paternal relationship with his subjects, Dr. K is cold, ruthless. She's a true believer in what she's doing, convinced that creating powered individuals is necessary for national security or whatever justification helps her sleep at night. But there's no pretense of care, no manipulation disguised as love. She sees 11 as an asset, a resource, the most valuable weapon on the planet that's currently not under her control. What makes Dr. K so dangerous is that she's not working alone, and she's not operating on emotion. This is a systematic, well-funded, institutional program. When Carly was imprisoned in the upside-down facility, Kay had her hooked up to sophisticated equipment. The blood harvesting wasn't crude. It was precise, medical, optimized for maximum extraction. The transfusions into pregnant women were carefully monitored. This is a woman who runs her operations with military efficiency. The experiments haven't been producing the desired results yet, apparently. Whatever they're doing with Carly's blood isn't creating the kind of powers they want. That's why Kay is so desperate to get her hands on 11. 11 is the gold standard, the most powerful psychic they've ever encountered. If they can study her, harvest her blood, maybe even extract her DNA, they could theoretically create an entire army of 11s. I think Dr. K is scarier than most of the monsters we've seen on this show. The Demogorgons are animals. The Mind Flayer is an alien intelligence. Vecna is a person twisted by trauma and power. But K represents something more insidious. She represents a system, a machine, an institution that will continue regardless of who's running it. That's the point Carly was making to 11. It doesn't matter if they kill Vecna. It doesn't matter if they destroy this particular lab. As long as 11 and Carly are alive, someone will come for them. Dr. K will be replaced by another scientist, another general, another bureaucrat who sees powered individuals as tools rather than people. The program has been running since at least the 1950s with Henry Creel. It survived Brenner's death. It'll survive Kay's defeat. In Volume 2, 11 and Hopper managed to knock Dr. K unconscious during their escape from the base, but she's still out there, still hunting, still planning. And even if they defeat Vecna and close the Upside Down permanently, the military threat remains. Unless Carly and 11 remove themselves from the equation entirely. That's the true horror. Vecna is the immediate threat, the monster they can fight. But Dr. K and what she represents, that's a threat that doesn't end with a battle. It ends with sacrifice. But let's talk about Vecna himself, because after all these seasons, we finally know exactly what he's trying to do. Henry Creel, also known as One, also known as Vecna, has been the big bad of Stranger Things since his reveal in Season 4, but his plan has always been a bit murky. We knew he wanted to reshape the world somehow. We knew he hated humanity. We knew he was connected to the Upside Down and the Mind Flayer, but the specifics of his endgame were unclear until now. In Season 5, it all becomes explicit. Vecna's goal is to merge the Abyss with Earth. Not just open gates between them, but actually combine the two realities into one. He wants to bring that desolate, red wasteland where he's been trapped into our world, fundamentally altering the nature of reality itself. It would be the end of the world as we know it, replaced by something twisted and nightmarish under his control. To accomplish this, Vecna needs power, a massive amount of psychic energy that he doesn't possess on his own. That's where the 12 children come in. They're not just hostages or victims, they're vessels, amplifiers. By channeling his consciousness through them simultaneously, Vecna can multiply his power 12-fold. It's like creating a psychic array, with each child acting as a node in a network that Vecna controls. Why 12 specifically? The show hasn't explicitly stated, but there's likely a ritual or magical significance to the number. Dustin would probably connect it to Dungeons and Dragons or some occult numerology. 12 apostles, 12 signs of the zodiac, 12 hours on a clock. It's one of those numbers that shows up repeatedly in mystical contexts. Whatever the reason, Vecna needs exactly 12, and he's got them now. At the end of episode 7, we see Vecna beginning the ceremony. He's gathered all 12 children in the Creel house within Camazotz. They're seated around a table holding hands in a circle. Henry lights candles and tells them they're in a place where there are no monsters, which is just, bro, you are the monster. The lie is so blatant it's almost funny, except these kids are completely under his control and can't recognize the irony. Then their necks crane backwards suddenly, their eyes rolling back until only the whites are showing. It's a deeply unsettling image. The ceremony has begun, and Vecna's plan to merge the worlds is now in motion. Fun fact, Vecna's appearance has changed for Season 5. Fans were talking about his redesign after the trailer dropped. He looks thinner and spinier than in Season 4, more skeletal and alien. Jamie Campbell Bower, who plays Vecna, said in interviews that viewers should be holding onto their chairs, particularly with what he's up to in Volume 2 and the finale. He described Volume 1 as an explosive setup for what continues to happen. What's really interesting is that Vecna has been planning this for decades. He's been trapped in the abyss since the 1950s, when 11 banished him as a child. That's approximately 30 years of isolation, of building his power, of learning to control the creatures native to that dimension. 30 years of waiting for the right moment to strike back. The gates that Vecna opened at the end of Season 4, the four-way split that tore through Hawkins, those weren't random, they were preparation, weakening the barrier between worlds, making it easier for the final merge to take place. And the timing matters too. The finale takes place right around the anniversary of Will's disappearance, November 6th. That date keeps coming back. It's when the first gate opened in 1983. It's when the Upside Down formed. There's a symmetry to it all. The Duffer Brothers have also confirmed that the finale will answer the question of Vecna's connection to the Mind Flayer. That's been a lingering mystery since Season 4. Did Henry create the Mind Flayer, or did he find it in the abyss and form some kind of partnership? We'll finally get that answer on New Year's Eve. Vecna has everything he needs now. The vessels, the power, the ceremony underway. The only thing standing between him and the end of the world is our group of heroes with their complicated, probably going to go wrong plan. So let's talk about the plan to stop all this, because it's ambitious, to say the least. By the end of episode 7, everyone has finally assembled at a location they're calling the Right Side Up. It's basically the opposite of the Upside Down, a meeting point in the real world where they can coordinate before splitting into teams. For the first time all season, the whole group is together in one place. Well, almost everyone. Holly, Derek, and the 12 kidnapped children are still trapped in Camazotz. But everyone else, all the original characters we've been following for 5 seasons, they're there, ready for one last mission. The plan they've come up with is classic Stranger Things. It's got multiple moving parts, requires perfect timing, and will probably go sideways in at least 3 different ways. But it's the best shot they've got. Team 1 is the Psychic Assault Squad. 11 and Carly will enter Camazotz together and confront Vecna during his ceremony. The idea is that Carly will use her illusion powers to disorient him, maybe make him see things that aren't real, break his concentration. While he's confused, 11 hits him with everything she's got. Raw telekinetic force. The same power she used to banish him as a child, but stronger now, more controlled. If they can disrupt the ceremony and kill Vecna, the vessels will be freed and the merge will fail. Team 2 is the rescue squad. Steve has identified something he's calling a beanstalk, which is apparently a path that leads directly from the Upside Down into the abyss. It sounds like something out of a fairy tale, honestly. A massive organic structure, probably made of vines or tendrils, that creates a passage between dimensions. The rescue team will use this path to reach the Creel house in Camazotz, extract Holly and the other children's physical bodies, and get them to safety. Team 3 is the Demolition Squad. Dustin has proposed bombing the exotic matter sphere that's stabilizing the wormhole. If they can destroy it, the bridge between Earth and the abyss will collapse. The upside down will vanish. Any creatures still inside will be trapped in the abyss permanently, unable to cross over anymore. It's a permanent solution, assuming the bomb actually works and they can get it into position. The timing is critical. They need to rescue everyone before the wormhole collapses. If Holly and the kids are still in the upside down, when Dustin detonates the bomb, they'll be lost, trapped in a collapsing dimension or pulled into the abyss. So the rescue team has to move fast, get everyone out, and signal the demolition team that it's safe to proceed. Of course, this all assumes nothing goes wrong, and if we've learned anything from Stranger Things, it's that plans never go perfectly. There's always a complication, always something they didn't account for. Maybe the military interferes, maybe Vecna has a backup plan, maybe the bomb doesn't work the way Dustin thinks it will, maybe one of the teams gets separated or trapped. What's interesting is that past Stranger Things plans have often succeeded because someone had a hidden ace, an unexpected advantage that saved the day at the last second. Dustin and Susie knowing Plank's constant, Hopper having a sword, 11 showing up when everyone thought she was dead. There's usually some kind of surprise element that tips the scales. Whether that happens this time, we'll have to wait and see. But it's a solid plan on paper. Defeat Vecna psychically. Rescue the hostages physically. Destroy the wormhole permanently. 3 teams, 3 objectives, all happening simultaneously during what's probably going to be the most intense sequence in the entire series. Which brings us to what everyone's actually been wondering about. Who's going to die? It's the question that's been hanging over this entire season. The Duffer Brothers have been cagey about it in interviews, which only makes people more anxious. Before Volume 1 even dropped, there were betting sites taking odds on which characters wouldn't make it to the end. Reddit threads full of theories. Twitter polls asking who's most likely to sacrifice themselves. The speculation has been absolutely relentless. The thing about Stranger Things is that it usually kills off supporting characters rather than the core cast. Barb died in Season 1. Bob died in Season 2. Alexi and Billy died in Season 3. Eddie died in Season 4. But the main kids, the original party, they've all survived so far. Even when it looks like 11 died at the end of Season 1, she came back. Even when Hopper seemingly died in Season 3, he survived in Russia. The show protects its core characters, which makes the threat feel less real sometimes. But this is the final season. The rules might be different now. 11 is the obvious candidate for a heroic death. Her entire arc has been building towards sacrifice since the beginning. In Season 1, she was willing to die to kill the Demogorgon. Brenner warned her in Season 2 that her powers would eventually kill her. We've seen the physical toll they take, the nosebleeds, the exhaustion, the way using them drains her. And now Carly has explicitly laid out a plan where 11 sacrifices herself to end the cycle of exploitation. The setup is all there. According to betting odds from gambling.com, 11 is at 2-1 to die in the finale. That's the second highest odds of any character. One Reddit user wrote that they think 11 will die while trying to seal up the upside down, using too much power and kind of disintegrating with it as a sacrifice. It would be poetic, full circle. The girl who opened the first gate being the one who closes it forever. But here's the thing. It's so obvious that it might be a red herring. We're all expecting 11 to die now, which is why the odds seem lower that she actually will. Stranger Things loves to subvert expectations. Maybe 11 agrees to the plan, but someone else sacrifices themselves instead. Maybe Mike dies to motivate her. Maybe Hopper takes her place. The show could be setting up this obvious sacrifice just to pull the rug out from under us. Will Byers is another strong candidate. Some fans predict that either Will or 11 will die, and the way Will's powers mirror Vecna's killing method is suspicious. In Episode 4, when Will destroyed those Demogorgons, it looked strikingly similar to Vecna's psychic attacks. There's this theory that when Vecna and the Demogorgons are finally defeated by 11, Will might die at the same time. Like his connection to the Upside Down is so deep that severing it would kill him too. But other fans disagree completely. Will seems like the least likely to die, actually. He's been the victim for 4 seasons. Killing him now would feel cruel rather than heroic. His arc is about survival, about reclaiming his life after being stolen from it. Giving him a death instead of a future would undermine all of that. Mike Wheeler has surprisingly high betting odds at 7-2. Some fans think he'll sacrifice himself to give Eleven the motivation she needs to finally close the gate. There's that scene in the trailer where Nancy appears to be washing blood off her hands, and people have speculated it's Mike's blood. Plus, there's the waterfall conversation with Eleven, which could be foreshadowing that one of them won't make it. If Mike dies saving Eleven, it would devastate her but also potentially give her the strength to do what needs to be done. To be honest, I can't see them killing Mike. He's been the heart of the party since the beginning. The leader. Finn Wolfhard has been there from the start. Killing him would fundamentally change what the show is. Steve Harrington is the character everyone's most worried about, honestly. His arc from jerk to hero is complete. He's had this beautiful relationship with Dustin that's evolved into something like a father figure or older brother dynamic. In Volume 2, there's that line where Steve and Dustin say "You die, I die" to each other. That's ominous. That sounds like foreshadowing. They even have a physical fight in an episode called Shock Jock, because Dustin is terrified of losing Steve after already losing Eddie. Dustin breaks down crying, saying he can't lose another friend who dies trying to be a hero. Steve hugs him and finally understands why Dustin has been so hostile and protective. It's a beautiful moment of reconciliation, which in television language often means one of them is doomed. But would the show actually kill Steve? The internet would riot, absolutely riot. He's become such a beloved character that his death would hit harder than almost anyone else's, maybe too hard. Hopper has survived so many near-death experiences that he feels almost invincible at this point. He was in the explosion at the end of Season 3 and survived. He survived a Russian prison. He's the dad character, the protector. Killing him would be brutal, but it's possible. He might sacrifice himself so Eleven doesn't have to. The Duffer Brothers said in an interview with The Independent that they don't want to kill characters just for shock value or because people have a bloodlust. They want deaths to serve the story and make sense for where the characters end up. That's somewhat reassuring, but it also means if someone does die, it'll be meaningful, and meaningful deaths hurt more. If we're being realistic, though, Stranger Things has a pattern. They tend to kill off supporting characters rather than the core kids. So let's talk about who else might be at risk. Jonathan Byers is an interesting case. Some fans think he'll sacrifice himself to save Will, which would be a very older brother thing to do. There's also that shot in the trailer of Nancy with blood on her hands, and people have speculated it could be Jonathan's, but his betting odds are 13-2, which are actually pretty long. Based on that, Jonathan might be relatively safe, though the show could surprise us. Lucas Sinclair had people worried back in Season 4. There was this whole theory that he would bargain with God to switch places with Max, sacrificing himself to save her. The theory was based on the lyrics to Running Up That Hill, Kate Bush's song that became so iconic that season. But Lucas made it through Season 4, and his current odds are 8-1. Those are long enough that he's probably safe this time too. Nancy Wheeler is a wild card. That blood on her hands in the trailer has to mean something. She's been in leadership roles throughout the series, always putting herself in danger to protect others. She could absolutely die in the finale, but the show hasn't really set up her death the way they've set up others. Robin Buckley feels safe, honestly. She's comedic relief in a lot of ways, and those characters tend to survive. Plus, her relationship with Steve is one of the show's best friendships. Killing one without devastating the other would be difficult, and killing both seems excessive. Murray Bauman is another comedic character who'll probably make it through. He's the one who interrupted Carly and Eleven's conversation about sacrifice, which feels more like a narrative function than a death flag. Murray has survived this long by being smart and resourceful. I'd be surprised if he dies now. Joyce Byers is the mum, the protector. Stranger Things doesn't usually kill the parents, and Joyce has been through enough. Losing her would destroy Will and Jonathan. It feels unnecessarily cruel. Dustin Henderson is probably safe because of his relationship with Steve. They've set up this fear that Dustin has about losing another friend after Eddie. That fear wouldn't be as impactful if Dustin himself dies. Plus, Dustin is the heart of the group in a lot of ways. The glue. Killing him would fundamentally change the dynamic. Erica Sinclair is the youngest character still actively involved in the missions. She's Lucas's little sister, smart and sassy and brave, but she's also still a kid. The show would have to go pretty dark to kill Erica. I don't see it happening. But Kaylee's probably the most at risk of any supporting character. She's explicitly laid out a plan where she dies alongside 11. She believes it's the only way to stop the cycle of military exploitation. She's accepted her fate. And unlike 11, who we've been following since season 1, Carly is still somewhat of an outsider. The audience likes her, but we don't have the same emotional investment. Her death would be tragic and meaningful, without being completely devastating. If I had to guess, Carly is the most likely supporting character to die. Her sacrifice would complete her arc, protect 11 from having to go through with it alone, and solve the problem of the military threat. It would hurt, but it would make sense narratively. The question is whether the Duffers will be satisfied with just one death, or if they're planning something bigger. Beyond deaths, let's talk about the plot twists nobody's expecting. Because the Duffers love to subvert expectations, and I'd bet money they've got surprises planned. The most popular twist theory is that 11 doesn't actually die, at least not permanently. The show pulled this exact move in season 1. She seemingly sacrificed herself killing the Demogorgon. Everyone thought she was dead. And then she was alive in the finale. Could they do it again? It would be a parallel to the series premiere, bringing everything full circle. Maybe 11 gets sucked into the Upside Down when it collapses, but survives in some kind of limbo state. Or maybe she loses her powers but lives. There are ways to have her make a sacrifice without it being a literal death. What if someone else sacrifices themselves instead of 11? That would be the more unexpected twist, honestly. We're all bracing for 11 to die because the setup is so obvious. But what if Mike throws himself into danger to save her? What if Hopper takes her place at the last second? The show has done this before, redirecting the expected tragedy onto a different character. It would hurt more because we wouldn't see it coming. There's also this theory about time manipulation. The Upside Down is frozen on November 6th, 1983. That's the night 11 made contact with Henry in the Abyss. The fact that it's locked in time suggests time might be more fluid than we think. Could they somehow reverse the initial opening? Could they prevent the wormhole from ever forming in the first place? It would create all sorts of paradoxes, but this is a show with psychic powers and alternate dimensions. Time travel isn't that much more of a stretch. Fun fact, when they film big productions like this, they sometimes shoot fake scenes just to throw off spoilers. Tom Holland famously thought he was filming a scene for Tony Stark's wedding in Avengers Endgame, only to find out later it was actually Tony's funeral. The Duffers could absolutely be doing something similar. Those leaked set photos that suggest 11 dies might be deliberate misdirection. Some fans have theorized that Vecna isn't the real villain, that the Mind Flayer is actually controlling him, pulling the strings, and the finale will reveal Henry has been a puppet this whole time. The Duffers have confirmed that the relationship between Vecna and the Mind Flayer will be explained in the finale, so that question is definitely getting answered. Whether it's the twist people are expecting, who knows? Then there's the cave in Camazotz. Holly theorized it represents a traumatic memory that Henry fears. What if that cave contains something crucial? A weakness? A secret about Henry's past that could be used against him? The fact that it's been emphasized suggests it'll be important somehow. I've also seen this really interesting theory that 11 could flip the Upside Down instead of destroying it. Turn it into a place of light and healing rather than darkness and death. Transform it instead of eliminating it. It's a more hopeful interpretation, and it would fit with themes of redemption and transformation that the show has explored. What's wild is that even if they defeat Vecna, the government still wins in some ways. Dr. K could escape with blood samples or data. The program could continue even after the Upside Down is gone. That would be a darker ending, more realistic maybe, where they save the world from the supernatural threat, but the human threat remains. Or, and hear me out, what if it's actually a happy ending? What if everybody lives and they defeat Vecna without major casualties? The finale is releasing on New Year's Eve, which is traditionally a hopeful time. New beginnings, fresh starts. Maybe the Duffers don't want to start 2026 with everyone crying. To be honest, I think the most likely twist is that 11 agrees to sacrifice herself, but the plan changes at the last second. Someone or something intervenes. The group finds another way, because after everything these characters have been through, they deserve a chance at happiness. One of the biggest mysteries left hanging over the show is something we've been wondering about since Season 2. What's the actual deal with the Mind Flayer? The Mind Flayer was introduced as this massive shadow creature in Season 2. It possessed Will, used him as a spy, and seemed to be the ultimate intelligence behind the Upside Down. In Season 3, it took on a physical form using melted humans, creating that horrific flesh monster that terrorized Hawkins. It was disgusting and terrifying and seemed unstoppable until 11 closed the gate. Then Season 4 complicated everything. We learned that Henry Creel found the Mind Flayer in the abyss after 11 banished him there as a child. There's a flashback where young Henry encounters these floating particles, this swirling consciousness in that red wasteland. He seems to shape it, mould it into the spider-like form we recognise. But the show left it ambiguous, whether Henry created the Mind Flayer or just found it and formed a partnership with it. That distinction matters. If Henry created the Mind Flayer, then he's the ultimate villain, the source of everything. But if the Mind Flayer already existed, and Henry is just its puppet or its lieutenant, then there's something even more dangerous lurking in the abyss. Something older and more powerful than Vecna. The Duffers confirmed to Variety that this question will be answered in the final episode, not in Volume 2, not in a post-credits scene, but in the actual finale itself. They've been holding on to this information for years, keeping it back as one of the last major reveals. What we know for sure is that the Mind Flayer is connected to the hive mind. It's the intelligence that links all the creatures from the abyss together. The Demogorgons, the Demodogs, the Demobats, the Vines, even Will when he was possessed. They're all connected to this central consciousness. When Vecna uses the 12 children as vessels, he's probably tapping into that same hive mind network, amplifying his connection to it. Apparently, in early planning, the Duffers had this whole mythology worked out. That 20-page document they wrote for Netflix detailed the relationship between Henry, the Mind Flayer, and the Abyss. They knew where this was going from the beginning. They just waited until the right moment to reveal it. I think Henry found the Mind Flayer rather than created it. It feels more threatening that way, more cosmic. The idea that the Abyss contains ancient intelligences that predate human civilization, and Henry is just the latest being to make contact with them. It would make Vecna less of a singular villain and more of a symptom of something larger and more unknowable. But we won't know for sure until December 31st. After years of speculation and theory crafting, we're finally going to get the definitive answer about the relationship between Vecna and the Mind Flayer. Speaking of characters returning from the past, we need to talk about someone I honestly didn't expect to see again. Because apparently, Barb Holland is back. Sort of. Barb died all the way back in Season 1, Episode 3. She was Nancy's best friend, the one who went to Steve's party reluctantly, and ended up getting dragged into the Upside Down by a Demogorgon. Her death was quick, brutal, and for a long time, nobody even knew she was missing. The show moved on pretty quickly from Barb, focusing on Will's rescue instead. But the internet did not move on. The Justice for Barb movement became this massive thing. People were furious that Nancy's best friend got killed off so casually, that the show didn't give her death proper weight, that she was basically forgotten while everyone celebrated Will coming home. Barb became a symbol for all the overlooked characters, the ones who don't get to be heroes or survivors. Shannon Purser, who played Barb, became a breakout star from that one brief role. The Duffers have acknowledged over the years that they underestimated how much people would care about Barb. They've said in interviews that, if they'd known, they might have handled her death differently, given it more screen time, made it more significant to the plot. Now apparently, we're getting some closure. The Duffer brothers confirmed in a Time article that Barb's body will appear in Season 5, Volume 2. She's likely part of Vecna's hive, that collection of victims he's kept over the years. It makes sense given the timeline. Barb died in the Upside Down in 1983. Her body was never recovered, just left there. Vecna would have found it eventually. What's interesting is why they're bringing her back now. It's not just fan service though, that's probably part of it. Barb's appearance ties into Nancy's storyline. Nancy has carried guilt about Barb's death for years. In Season 4, when Vecna showed Nancy visions of her worst fears, Barb was there. The guilt, the sense of responsibility, the feeling that she abandoned her best friend for a boy. That trauma is still raw for Nancy. Seeing Barb's body in Vecna's hive would be devastating for Nancy. It would force her to confront that guilt one last time. And maybe, in defeating Vecna and destroying the hive, Nancy can finally let Barb rest. Get the closure she's needed since Season 1. Fun fact, the justice for Barb hashtag trended multiple times across different seasons. People just couldn't let it go. And now, finally, the show is acknowledging that loss in a concrete way. Barb's return is bittersweet, but it feels like the show finally acknowledging what fans have said for years. She mattered, her death mattered, and she deserves to be remembered. But Barb isn't the only dead character fans are hoping to see. Let's talk about Eddie Munson, because even though he's definitely dead, fans refuse to accept it. Eddie Munson was introduced in Season 4 and immediately became a fan favourite. Joseph Quinn's performance was magnetic. Eddie was this metalhead dungeon master who got framed for murders he didn't commit, went on the run with the kids, and ended up sacrificing himself in the Upside Down to save Hawkins. His final scene, playing Master of Puppets on guitar while Demobats swarmed around him, was genuinely one of the most iconic moments in the entire series. Then he died, and fans absolutely lost it. The thing is, people don't want to accept that Eddie is gone. They've been theorizing about ways he could come back ever since Season 4 ended. The most popular theory involves Cass the Betrayer from Dungeons & Dragons lore. In D&D, Cass was Vecna's most trusted lieutenant, who eventually betrayed him. Cass became a vampire after being defeated by Vecna. So the theory goes that Eddie could return as some kind of undead servant, maybe controlled by Vecna, and then turn against him at a crucial moment. It's a cool theory, honestly. It would fit the D&D references that Stranger Things loves. Eddie's death happened in the Upside Down, his body was left there. Vecna could theoretically do something with it. The pieces are there for a supernatural resurrection if the writers wanted to go that route. But the Duffer brothers have confirmed multiple times that Eddie is really dead, not coming back. His sacrifice was meaningful and final. Bringing him back would undermine that heroic moment and cheapen his death. Joseph Quinn has moved on to other projects. By all accounts, Eddie Munson's story is over. That doesn't stop fans from hoping, though. Some think he might appear in a flashback or a vision. Dustin is still grieving Eddie heavily in Season 5. In Volume 2, Dustin and Steve have that big fight where Dustin breaks down about losing Eddie. The wound is still fresh, so maybe we'll see Eddie in Dustin's memories or in some kind of hallucination. Not alive, but present in spirit. To be honest, I get why fans want him back. That guitar scene was genuinely one of the best moments in the show's history. Eddie deserved more than 4 episodes, but sometimes characters leave an impact precisely because their time is limited. Eddie's death meant something. It was heroic and selfless and tragic. Bringing him back would dilute that. Eddie's probably not coming back, but his impact on the show and the fans is permanent. And that's its own kind of immortality. With all these theories about death and darkness, we need to ask the bigger question. Can Stranger Things actually have a happy ending? It's a fair question because the show has always walked this line between hope and tragedy. It's never been grimdark, never been relentlessly bleak, but it's also never shied away from real loss and pain. So where does the finale land on that spectrum? If we look at the pattern of how previous seasons ended, there's a consistent tone. Bittersweet. Not completely tragic, but not entirely happy either. Season 1 ended with 11 seemingly dead, but the gate closed and Will safe. Season 2 ended with Bob Newby dead, but the Mind Flayer expelled from Will and the gate sealed. Season 3 ended with Hopper seemingly dead, but the kids surviving and the Russian facility destroyed. Season 4 ended with Max in a coma, but Vecna wounded and the group reunited. There's always a cost, always a sacrifice, but there's also always hope. The show never ends on complete despair. It finds that balance between acknowledging loss and affirming that the fight was worth it. What's interesting about the finale releasing on New Year's Eve is the symbolism of that date. New Year's Eve is about transitions, endings and beginnings, closing one chapter and opening another. It's traditionally a hopeful time, a celebration, looking forward rather than back. Would the Duffers really want millions of people to start 2026 crying over a devastating finale? Or would they want to send people into the new year with something more uplifting? Some fans have latched onto this timing as evidence that the ending will be happier than expected. The whole everybody lives theory. Vecna dies, the Upside Down closes, and somehow all our favourite characters make it through intact. No major deaths, no heartbreaking sacrifices, just a clean victory and a chance for everyone to finally have normal lives. I honestly can't see them going that route, though. The stakes are too high. The setup has been too intense. A completely happy ending where nobody dies would feel unearned at this point. Anticlimactic even. But the Duffers have said things in interviews that suggest they're not going for gratuitous tragedy either. Matt Duffer told reporters that he hopes by the time people get to the end, it feels like there's something inevitable about what happens. Not shocking for shock's sake, but right for the story. Ross Duffer echoed that sentiment, saying they've been working on this ending for 3 years, and it felt right to let it go. Sean Levy, one of the producers, has talked about sticking the landing, about giving the story and the characters the ending they deserve. That language suggests they're being thoughtful about it, not just going for maximum emotional damage. The show's influences also matter here. The Duffers have always drawn from 80s movies, and a lot of those had hopeful endings. The Goonies, E.T., Stand By Me. These are films about kids growing up, facing darkness, and coming through it changed but intact. They're about the end of innocence, but also about the resilience of friendship and love. That's kind of what Stranger Things has always been about too. My guess, the ending will be bittersweet, leaning slightly more toward hope than tragedy. Some characters might die, probably Carly at minimum. There will be loss and grief, but the core group, the original party, they'll survive. They'll get to grow up. They'll get their chance at normal lives, even if those lives are forever marked by what they've been through. It won't be a fairy tale ending, but it won't be nihilistic either. It'll be honest, emotional, and hopefully satisfying in a way that honours everything these characters and this story have meant to people over the years. Speaking of happy endings, we need to talk about Mike and Eleven specifically, because after 4 seasons of their relationship being tested and complicated and pulled apart, their future together feels uncertain. Mike and Eleven have been the emotional core of Stranger Things since the first season. She was the strange girl with no hair and incredible powers. He was the kid who took her in, protected her, taught her what friendship meant. Their relationship evolved from that initial connection into genuine love. But it's never been easy. She's had to hide, run away, move across the country. He struggled to express his feelings, to be vulnerable, to say the words "I love you" even when it mattered most. In season 4, Mike finally got there. When Eleven was losing her fight against Vecna, when she was literally dying, Mike poured his heart out, told her he loved her, told her she was his superhero, and that confession, that vulnerability, gave Eleven the strength to fight back. It saved her life. It was this massive character moment for both of them. Now in Volume 2, they have this conversation about the future that's both beautiful and heartbreaking. Mike talks about moving somewhere together, after all this is over? Somewhere peaceful, with at least one waterfall. It's such a specific detail, and it feels significant. Not just anywhere, but somewhere with natural beauty. Somewhere they can heal. Build a life together, away from the constant danger and government surveillance. The waterfall represents everything they've never had. Stability, peace, normalcy. Just the two of them without monsters or military operations or psychic battles. It's the dream of a regular life that Eleven has never experienced and Mike has been fighting to protect. But that conversation now feels like tragic foreshadowing. Because Eleven might not survive to see any waterfalls. She might sacrifice herself. Or, even if she lives, can she ever really be free? As long as she exists, the government will hunt her. Dr. K won't stop. Someone else will take Dr. K's place. The cycle continues unless Eleven removes herself from the equation. Matt Duffer said in interviews that Mike becomes the leader again this season, but in a more confident and mature version than in season 1. He's grown up. He's not the kid who panicked when Eleven disappeared anymore. He's someone who can hold the group together, make hard decisions, be strong when others need him to be. But can he be strong enough to lose Eleven? Can he survive that? I really want them to get their happy ending, honestly. They've earned it. Both of them have sacrificed so much, been through so much trauma. The idea of them never getting that peaceful life together, never seeing that waterfall, is genuinely heartbreaking. But Stranger Things rarely gives easy happiness. It gives hard-won survival. It gives bittersweet victories. It gives characters who carry their scars but keep moving forward. Whether Mike and Eleven end up together, whether they both survive, whether that waterfall is a dream deferred or a promise broken, we'll know in just a few days. But whatever happens, their relationship has been one of the most compelling parts of this entire series. And speaking of characters who deserve better, we absolutely need to talk about Steve Harrington. Because if he dies, the internet will riot. Steve's transformation, from season 1 to now, is genuinely one of the best character arcs in the entire series. He started as the stereotypical jock boyfriend, the popular kid who was kind of a jerk, more concerned with his image than anything else. Then Nancy broke up with him, and instead of becoming the villain of the story, Steve became a hero. By season 2, he was babysitting Dustin and fighting demodogs with a nail-covered baseball bat. By season 3, he was working at Scoops Ahoy and developing this incredible friendship with Robin. By season 4, he was basically the group's protector, the one who jumps into danger first, who takes the hits so the kids don't have to. His arc from selfish teenager to selfless guardian has been beautiful to watch. His relationship with Dustin is particularly special. It evolved into something like a father figure or older brother dynamic. They bicker and tease each other, but there's genuine love there. Dustin looks up to Steve. Steve sees something of himself in Dustin, the kid he might have been if he'd been a little less cool and a little more nerdy, which makes Volume 2 so painful. In an episode called Shock Jock, Steve and Dustin get into an actual physical fight. Not playful wrestling, but a real altercation about Eddie. Dustin is still grieving, still processing the loss of his friend who died being a hero. And he's terrified it's going to happen again with Steve. He can't lose another person he cares about to heroic sacrifice. The fight ends with Dustin breaking down, sobbing, saying he can't lose Steve after already losing Eddie. And Steve finally understands. He hugs Dustin and they reconcile. It's this incredibly emotional moment that shows how much they mean to each other. But then there's that line, "You die, I die." It's said between them in what feels like a moment of solidarity, of commitment to each other. But in television language, that kind of line is usually ominous. It's foreshadowing. It's the show telling us that one or both of them might not make it. Fun fact, Joe Keery has been branching out into other projects, including his music career. He's become a legitimate musician under the name Djo. Some people have speculated that his reduced screen time in the season 5 trailers might suggest a smaller role or an early exit from the story. To be honest, if Steve dies, I'll be devastated. His character has become so beloved that his death would hit harder than almost anyone else's. The nail bat, the hair, the babysitter energy, all of it has made Steve Harrington into an icon. One Reddit user predicted that Steve will continue being a living legend. I really hope they're right. Steve has survived impossible odds before. He's been beaten up more times than anyone can count. He's fought monsters, Russian soldiers, and his own insecurities. Surely he can survive one more battle. But the setup is there for a heroic sacrifice. The reconciliation with Dustin. The you die I die commitment. The complete arc from jerk to hero. If the Duffers wanted to give Steve a meaningful death, all the pieces are in place. I'm just really hoping they don't. So how does this final battle actually play out? We've got all the pieces on the board. Now we just need to figure out how they move. The finale is over 2 hours long, which is basically a feature film. That's a massive amount of time for a single episode, and it suggests the battle sequence itself is going to be absolutely epic in scope. Frank Darabont is directing, which is pretty significant. He's known for The Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile, but he also directed some of the best episodes of The Walking Dead. He knows how to handle large-scale action with emotional weight. Ross Duffer said, in an interview, that this is the most eventful episode in the entire series, which is saying something given how intense some of the previous finales have been. The scale doesn't go down. It only gets bigger and more intense as the story races toward its conclusion. I think the episode will open with the team splitting up. They've made their plan, said their goodbyes, and now it's time to execute. Eleven and Carly will enter Camazotz together, probably through some kind of psychic projection, while their bodies remain in the Upside Down. They'll navigate through Vecna's mindscape, dealing with whatever horrors he's constructed there, making their way toward the Creel house where he's conducting the ceremony. Meanwhile, the rescue team uses Steve's beanstalk path to reach the abyss. That sequence is probably going to be visually stunning and terrifying. Imagine climbing through this massive organic structure that connects dimensions, surrounded by the red wasteland of the abyss, with demogorgons or worse lurking in the distance. They'll reach the Creel house from the physical side and start extracting the children's bodies one by one. Dustin's demolition team will be positioning the explosives around the exotic matter sphere. That's probably going to require some technical problem solving, classic Dustin figuring out the science under pressure. Maybe the sphere is more unstable than they thought. Maybe it's protected by something. There's always a complication. And here's where things start going wrong, because they always do. Maybe the military shows up. Dr. K could interfere, trying to capture 11 even in the middle of the apocalypse. Maybe Vecna senses their presence and sends creatures to stop them. Maybe the timing gets thrown off and the teams lose communication with each other. Inside Camazotz, 11 and Carly confront Vecna during his ceremony. The 12 children are still channeling their power to him, their eyes rolled back, completely under his control. Kaylee uses her illusions to break his concentration. Maybe she makes him see his own fears, his trauma from childhood, the things he's tried to bury. While he's distracted, 11 hits him with everything she's got. But Vecna has been planning this for decades. He's not going down easy. There's probably a massive psychic battle, the kind of thing where reality itself seems to warp and break. Will might tap into the hive mind to help 11, giving her information or weakening Vecna's control over the vessels. Max and Holly, now freed from their mental prisons, might play a role in saving the other children. The rescue team gets everyone out just as the wormhole starts destabilizing. Maybe there's a moment where someone gets left behind, or nearly left behind, creating that last-second tension. Dustin detonates the explosives. The exotic matter sphere shatters. The bridge between worlds begins to collapse. And this is where the sacrifice moment happens. Whether it's 11 and Carly choosing to stay behind, or someone else making an unexpected choice, or maybe they find another way at the last second. The Upside Down vanishes, taking whatever or whoever is still inside with it. The abyss is sealed off from Earth permanently. Then the aftermath, the immediate reactions. Who made it out? Who didn't? What's left of Hawkins? How do they pick up the pieces? It's going to be epic, emotional, and probably devastating in ways we're not prepared for, but at least we'll finally know how it all ends. The technical question of how they actually close the upside down forever is fascinating when you think about it, because they've tried this before and it didn't stick. In season 1, 11 closed the gate by channeling all her power into sealing it. She succeeded, but it cost her everything. She disappeared, seemingly died, and the gate stayed closed for about a year. But it wasn't permanent. The gate could be reopened because the underlying connection between dimensions still existed. Season 2 was similar. Will had to be purged of the Mind Flayer's influence, and then 11 closed the gate at Hawkins' lab again. Massive psychic force, total exhaustion, but it worked. The gate sealed. Except again, not permanently. Season 4 proved that because Vecna was able to open multiple gates all over Hawkins, creating that four-way split that tore the town apart. The problem with those previous closings is that they were treating symptoms, not the cause. They were sealing doorways without destroying the bridge itself. As long as the wormhole existed, as long as that connection between Earth and the abyss remained, gates could always be opened again by someone with enough power. Dustin's plan is different. He's not trying to close a gate, he's trying to destroy the infrastructure. The exotic matter sphere is what stabilizes the wormhole, keeps it open and functional. It's the anchor point. Destroy that, and the bridge collapses entirely. The upside down, which is just the wormhole made manifest, would vanish, cease to exist. But what happens to the abyss itself? That dimension doesn't go away. It's still out there, still existing as its own realm. It just becomes unreachable from Earth. No bridge, no passage, no way to cross between the two. Any creatures still in the abyss when the wormhole collapses stay trapped there permanently. That includes Vecna, if he's still alive when it happens. What's really interesting is whether 11 and Carly's sacrifice is actually necessary for this to work. Carly thinks it is. She believes that as long as they exist, the government will find a way to recreate the bridge, to reopen the connection. But is she right? Could Dustin's bomb work without them dying? Or is there some psychic component to maintaining the seal that requires a permanent presence? Will's connection to the upside down would presumably sever when the wormhole collapses. He's been tied to it since 1983, able to sense the mind flayer, tap into the hive mind, feel when something is wrong. Losing that connection could be painful, like amputating a limb, or it could be a relief. Freedom from something that's haunted him for years. The scars on Hawkins won't disappear though. That four-way split, the damage to buildings and infrastructure, the military occupation. Those are physical remnants that will take years to repair. And the psychological damage to everyone who lived through this? That's permanent too. To be honest, I'm not sure even destroying the exotic matter is enough, but it's the best plan they've got, and sometimes that has to be good enough. So let's say they win. Let's say they close the upside down and survive. What happens next? The immediate aftermath is going to be chaos, cleanup, medical attention, figuring out who made it and who didn't. Reunions and grief happening simultaneously. The military will still be there, still a threat, unless Dr. K is dealt with permanently. Hawkins will be scarred, literally torn apart by those gates. Rebuilding will take years. But beyond that immediate crisis, what does the future look like for these characters? The timeline is full 1987. Mike, Will, Lucas, Dustin, and 11 are all around 16 or 17 years old. Nancy, Jonathan, and Steve are in their early 20s. These aren't kids anymore. They're at the age where life decisions start to matter. College, careers, relationships, all of that is right around the corner. I think we'll see a time jump. Maybe just a few weeks to show immediate recovery, or maybe months or even a year to show how everyone has adjusted to life after the upside down. The Duffers love using time as a storytelling device, and a flash forward would let them show the long-term impact of everything that happened. Mike and 11, if they both survive, might finally get their peaceful life somewhere. Maybe not immediately, but eventually. Whether that includes a waterfall, we'll see. Will deserves to just be a normal teenager for once, to explore who he is without monsters and mindscapes and trauma. Lucas and Max, if she makes it through, have earned their happiness too. Steve's future is interesting. He's talked about not getting into college, about working retail jobs, about not knowing what comes next. But maybe after saving the world multiple times, he figures it out, finds something that matters to him, or maybe he becomes a Hawkins legend, the guy who fought monsters and lived to tell about it. The group staying together versus drifting apart is the real question. Growing up means people go their separate ways sometimes. It's natural. But these kids have been through something that bonds them forever. Whether they stay in constant contact or drift apart geographically while remaining connected emotionally, that's what the finale will show us. Just because the main story ends doesn't mean we're done with Hawkins, though. Netflix isn't ready to let go of Stranger Things just yet. There's a confirmed animated spin-off called Tales from 85. It's going to be an anthology series set in 1985, right in the middle of the Stranger Things timeline. Specifically between seasons 2 and 3, apparently. The format sounds like it'll explore different stories and characters within that year, maybe showing what other towns were dealing with, or focusing on side characters we didn't spend much time with in the main show. What's interesting is that 1985 was a relatively quiet year in the main storyline. The gate was closed after season 2. The Mind Flayer was expelled from Will. Things seemed okay for a while before the Russians showed up in season 3, so there's room to tell stories that don't directly impact what we already know happened. The Duffers have been pretty clear that the main story is complete. They've said this really is the end of Eleven, Mike, Lucas, Dustin, Steve, and all those characters. There's no season 6 planned, no continuation of their story. The ending we're getting on December 31st is final. But the world can continue. The mythology they've built, the idea of the upside down and powered individuals and government experiments, that's bigger than just Hawkins. Other labs existed. Other towns might have had strange incidents. There's potential for stories that expand the universe without retreading the same ground. There's also The First Shadow, the prequel play that's been running and explores young Henry Creel's story in the 1950s. Matt Duffer mentioned that the finale has more overlap with the play, revealing things they deliberately held back so they could show them on screen first. Apparently, Stranger Things has been viewed over 1 billion times across all seasons. Netflix knows it's a massive property. They're going to mine it for content in whatever ways make sense. Just hopefully in ways that respect what made the original special. And that, my dear friends, is where we'll end tonight's deep dive into finale predictions. We've covered a lot. The current state of the story, after Volume 2, the upside down reveals, Eleven's potential sacrifice, death predictions for basically everyone, plot twists, and what the actual final battle might look like. Whether I'm right or completely off base, we'll find out together on December 31st at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. The finale is over 2 hours long, and it'll be screening in theatres simultaneously with the Netflix release, if you want that theatrical experience. Over 350 theatres across the US and Canada are participating. In a future video, I'm definitely going to do a post-finale breakdown once we've all processed what actually happens. There's going to be so much to unpack, but until next time, sweet dreams. I hope these theories gave you something to think about as you drift off, and I genuinely can't wait to see how the Duffers actually end this story we've been following for nearly a decade.